All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we are with Chapter 3. This is Part 1, Lecture number 1 of our study of the body tissues. Let's begin. Now, tissues, they are groups of cells that are similar in structure and function. And there are 4 primary types. That's epithelial, which is the covering, connective tissue, which provides support, nervous tissue, which supplies us with control, and muscular tissue for movement. Let's take a look at each of those. All right, here's a type of epithelial tissue. Here's a type of connective, nervous, and muscle. Our focus on this lecture will be all about the epithelial tissues. An epithelial tissue is a sheet of cells that covers a body surface or lines a cavity. Epithelium occurs in the body as covering or lining epithelium and as glandular epithelium. And we'll talk about those at the very end of this lecture. Now, the functions of epithelial tissue is for protection, absorption, filtration, and secretion. Now, there are special characteristics of epithelial tissue. They are composed of closely packed cells with little extracellular material between them. Right? Not compared to when we get to the connective tissue, we'll talk about that and how there is a lot of extracellular material in between connective tissue. Now, adjacent epithelial cells are bound together by specialized contacts such as desmosomes and tight junctions. They exhibit polarity by having an apical surface, which is the free surface, and a basal surface, which is the attached surface. Now, they're supported underneath by an underlying connective tissue. Now, you can see here where it talks about avascular. They're innervated, meaning that they have nerves, but they're avascular, meaning they have no blood supply. And these type of cells have high regeneration capacity. Again, only if they're well nourished. So let's look at a couple. Here is what the epithelial characteristics look like. They're very tightly packed together. The number of cell layers. We'll talk about here the big thing about classification of epithelial. Epithelial is given 2 names. Now, the first name indicates the number of layers present, either simple, meaning 1, or stratified, meaning more than 1. So let's go through and look at, here is what simple epithelium looks like, and here's what stratified looks like. Not only is it classified by whether it's got 1 layer or many layers, but it also, the second name, demonstrates the shape of the cells. Are they squamous or squamous? Are they cuboidal or cuboidal? Or are they columnar? Some people pronounce those other names differently, so just bear with me. All right, so let's first of all talk about, let's show you some different ones here. We got simple and stratified. Okay, and here is the cuboidal, which are simple and stratified. Then we have the columnar, which is simple and stratified. Okay. All right, let's first go into simple squamous epithelium. It's a single layer of scale-shaped cells. Okay, usually forms membranes. It lines body cavities. It lines the lungs. We want only 1 layer there where the lungs are so that we can get the molecules of oxygen and carbon dioxide to pass through. Sounds obvious, doesn't it? And here's what they look like. Next up, we have simple cuboidal epithelium. It's a single layer of cube-shaped cells forming the smallest ducts and glands and many of the kidney tubules. So they're found in lots of different places. And here's what it looks like. Next up, we have simple columnar epithelium. That's a single layer of column-shaped cells that line the digestive tract. That's where we find it, and you often find within this simple columnar some mucus-producing goblet cells. Here's what it looks like. Next up, we have pseudostratified columnar epithelium. It contains cells of varying heights, giving the false impression of the presence of many layers, when in fact it's only one layer. And here's what it looks like. All right, next up we have the stratified. The stratified epithelial's main function is protection. We find it in places like the skin, the mouth, the esophagus, there where we need lots of layers for that kind of protection. So we're going to start looking at those. And here's one layer this we would find on the skin, the stratified squamous. Next up we have the stratified cubital or cuboidal epithelium. It's rare. It's mostly found in the ducts of some of the larger glands. We have the stratified columnar epithelium is found in limited distribution with small amounts in the pharynx, the male urethra, and lining some of the glandular ducts. We have one other one that we want to talk about here, and that is the transitional epithelium. This forms the lining of hollow organs of the urinary system that stretch as they fill. You'd find this in the bladder, right, where you've got to increase the size of the bladder, and then as you urinate, then the size of the bladder goes back down. Here's what it looks like. Lastly, we want to talk about glandular epithelium. A gland is one or more cells responsible for secreting a particular product. And there are two major gland types. One is the endocrine gland, and we have a whole system that we'll talk about the hormones as we move through our study of the body. Then we also have the exocrine gland. These are secretions which empty through the ducts, such as sweat and oil. So remember all the different types of epithelial tissue, know the difference between stratified and simple, and know the difference between those that are squamous, cuboidal, or columnar. And also you need to know those ones that are pseudostratified and those that are transitional. Now what we're going to do in class is we will go through these, we will show you these, and then you will have to be able to identify them on a quiz. All right? Well, there's lecture 1 for you. Goodbye.